Made with Spoken.
Portrait of the young man as a reluctant baron. It was well past midnight when the doorbell rang. Virginia put down her tablet, then checked the monitor on the coffee table. Sure enough, it was Lillian at the tunnel entrance looking famished and very cold. "Hold on, Lillian," she said through the intercom. "I'll buzz you through decon." She pushed the button to let him through, then scanned the living room for her slippers. When she didn't spot them right away, she ran downstairs barefoot. She opened her basement door to find Lillian standing in his Haas suit, with helmet in hand and bare feet. "Lillian," she scolded, "where the hell are your boots?" "I left them in the decon chamber," he replied. "They had a ton of snow on them." "Christ," Virginia swore. "Don't tell me you actually ventured outside. Do you know what the wind chill is?" He shrugged. "I think it was minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit last time I checked. But we don't get much snow in the Crescent, so I was curious." "Curiosity is what's going to get you killed," Virginia grumbled. Then she opened the door the rest of the way to let him in. "I'm sorry I'm so late," Lillian apologized as he walked past her. "But the festivities just ended an hour ago, and after that, I had to fight with the tour manager to be able to leave the guest house." He smiled sheepishly. "You know they keep me on a tight leash." "I figured you'd be a while," Virginia said. "The lecture was standing room only. Well, get settled and I'll fix you some tea." She noticed all he had was a backpack, no suitcase. "Didn't you bring some clothes?" she asked. Lillian gestured towards the backpack. "It's all in there. I travel light." Then he crossed the threshold and followed her up the stairs. She showed him to the guest bedroom and left him to gear down. While he changed, she brewed a pot of tea and rolled a couple joints. Lillian met her in the kitchen several minutes later, dressed in worn jeans and a sweatshirt a couple sizes too big for him. He reminded Virginia of the freshman in her Intro to Philosophy class. He didn't look a day over 18, although he was almost 10 years older, only days away from his 28th birthday. And he certainly didn't look like a multimillionaire genius who founded the fastest-growing startup in the Shattered States. He gave her a bear hug, a very skinny bear hug, because Virginia swore she could feel every one of his ribs as he held her. "Lillian," she scolded, "don't they let you eat on these tours?" "Yes," he replied, "and I eat a lot." "You wouldn't know it from hugging you," she said. "I've always been thin. It runs in my family." He gave her a final squeeze. "I swear, I've been taking care of myself," he reassured her. "You don't have to worry about me," he smiled. "Thanks for letting me crash here for a while. I needed to escape the madding crowd." "You know you're always welcome here," she said, and led him to the kitchen table. "Sit, have a spot of tea." She passed him a joint. "And some smoke, only the best for you." "Jenny," he said, grinning, "you know me so well." "So," she asked, when they were seated and settled, "how long will you be stranded in our winter wonderland?" "My tour manager says at least a couple of days. There's nearly 4 feet of snow on the ground now, and it's still falling, sometimes at the rate of a foot an hour." "Classes are canceled tomorrow," Virginia announced, "so we can both sleep in." She took a drag on her joint, then exhaled. "And since you'll be here in the house with me, I might actually get some decent sleep for once." Lillian leaned in and gently touched her knee. "Yes, I've been meaning to ask you. How are you holding up?" Virginia sipped her tea. "Well," she sighed, "as long as I keep busy, I'm fine. But the nights are really hard. The bed's too big and the house is too quiet. I feel Nettie everywhere. I mean, I know when she was alive, she traveled a lot, and it always seemed like I was by myself. But this is different. This time, I know she's never coming home. Nettie's memory was bound up in the simplest things, even the teacup Virginia was holding. Nettie had scored the set in some obscure Brazilian hamlet while she was chasing a story. "I'm so sorry," Lillian said. "I know it must be hard. I'm sorry I couldn't make it to the service." "Don't be. The service was an absolute zoo. The burial might have been private, but the public memorial was exhausting. Still, I knew I had to make some of the ceremony public because Nettie didn't just belong to me, she belonged to the world." Virginia paused, then added, "Kind of like you." Lillian tipped his chair back on its hind legs and closed his eyes. By some miracle, he didn't fall. Not anymore, he thought to her, or at least not as much. "What do you mean?" Virginia thought back. "After this tour, I'm done," he announced aloud. He let his chair fall back to the upright position where it landed with a dull thud. No more boy wonder of the bayou. The news made Virginia so happy, she started clapping. Hallelujah! She knew how much Lillian loathed the lecture circuit. She also knew why he tolerated it for so long. Touring made him relatable, which bolstered his brand and attracted investors, but it also meant time away from the lab and from home. "That's wonderful news, but what will your partners think?" "I'm buying out the last of them next month. After that, Ruby Biotech will be mine, and I can run it as I see fit. My life will be my own, too." Virginia knew exactly what this meant. "You're finally buying out H. Prentice? I can't imagine he's thrilled about that." "No, he isn't," Lillian agreed. "But I don't see why not. We barely tolerate each other. But he does recognize your talent, and he enjoys basking in your glow. Besides, his association with you keeps Grove Pharmaceuticals' stock price stable." "But he wants me to be a celebrity like him," Lillian explained. "And I don't want Ruby Biotech to become all about me. The rags to riches story has served its purpose. All the money spent on these vanity tours would be better spent on R&D. I don't want to be all flash and no substance." Virginia laughed. "No one would ever describe you that way, at least not if they knew you." "And there's the rub," said Lillian. "I feel as if few folks really do. Besides, I'd rather be known through my work instead." Virginia nodded. "I understand," and she did. This was a big step for him to take, and risky, even if he was one of the most brilliant people on the planet. "I feel as though I should break out the champagne, except I know you don't drink." "Maybe it's just as well," Lillian said. "The deal isn't final yet, and I don't want to jinx it." Virginia noticed his teacup was nearly empty, and his joint was almost gone. "More tea or smoke?" she offered. "No, I'm fine," he thought to her. "Well," she began, squaring her shoulders, "I've got a bit of news, too. I'm moving south to Liberty City." "Are you retiring?" asked Lillian. "No," Virginia answered, sadly shaking her head. "This campus is shutting down." "What?" Lillian gasped. "With the extreme weather, it's become impractical to stay here any longer," Virginia confessed. "Actually, it's been that way for at least 10 years. For a while, the tunnels held us over, but we seem to be spending more and more of our time underground, and we can only retrofit the buildings so much." Last winter, after a big snow, the roof on my building partially collapsed, and several students were injured. We're lucky no one died. And of course, everything buckles in the summer heat. Last weekend, the board said, "Fuck it," and finally gave up. This university has been in this area in one form or another for almost 500 years, but soon we will be scattered like the diaspora. My department will relocate to Liberty City. I'll finally get to live in a dome. You don't sound thrilled about that, Lillian noted. Well, from what you tell me, Crescent Dome doesn't exactly thrill you either, Virginia countered. You've got a swanky condo in the East Quadrant you barely use. Even your own mother refuses to live there. Lillian laughed. Mom is set in her ways. So what's your excuse? Living outside keeps me grounded. I don't want to forget where I came from. He squirmed a little, then switched topics. He hated talking about himself, especially if it was unscripted. Do the students know this campus is shutting down for good? No official announcement has been made yet, Virginia replied. But I'm sure they suspect something. The board has convened 4 times this semester, and they've been more hush-hush than usual. Big secrets always mean big changes, big unpleasant ones. How do you feel about leaving? Asked Lillian. I'm sad, Virginia replied wearily, but I'm ready. Besides, I really do need to be somewhere else. Since Nettie's passing, this house doesn't feel like home anymore. Lillian reached for his friend's hand and squeezed it. Hang in there, he thought to her. It will get better. Then he rose from the table and announced he was headed to bed. Virginia retired soon after, and as she predicted, she actually got a decent night's sleep, at least for her. She awoke a little after 10. That wasn't all the sleep she needed, but it was nearly 7 hours of blissful oblivion, and she was thankful for that. She checked the monitor on her nightstand. The snow hadn't breached the tunnels, but it did look awfully damp down there. She'd have to check for leaks later. Her last inspection had been good, but the current storm was brutal. Everything she'd read online predicted a record breaker. She switched the monitor to exterior view. The outside camera was mounted high atop a pole on the roof, and all she could see was a pillowy white expanse. But at least the snow had paused for the time being. She hoped it had stopped for good. According to the readout at the bottom of the screen, there was almost 6 feet on the ground. It looked like Lillian was going to be stranded for a while. Virginia eased out of bed, then padded down the hall to check on him. She cracked open the door to the guest room to find Lillian stone cold asleep, splayed across the bed with his wild curly hair obscuring most of his face. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and read him. She didn't go deep because she didn't want to wake him up, but she had to get some inkling of how he was really doing. He kept so much bottled up inside. Nettie was the reason they were friends. The news site Nettie worked for at the time had assigned her to cover one of Lillian's first lectures back when he had just begun testing an oil-eating microbe to rehabilitate environmental damage in the Crescent and beyond. He was all of 18 years old, but he had already completed the MD, PhD program at his regional university, graduating at the top of his class. Nettie was grumpy about the assignment. She hated celebrities. But Nettie, Virginia said, the guy's a freaking prodigy. That should count for something. I mean, he bends DNA like it's putty at an age when most people are just finishing high school. Just because he's a super nerd doesn't make him interesting to me, Nettie grumbled. Nettie's employer had secured them seats in the VIP section. Well, at least he'll be more than a speck on the stage, Virginia said, trying, as always, to see the silver lining. But Nettie wasn't having it. She scowled, took out her tablet and stylus, and started taking notes. The lecture began right on time. After a brief introduction, Dr. Lillian Ruby ambled on stage to thunderous applause. Nettie and Virginia were shocked. They knew he was young, but they hadn't expected him to look so much like, well, a kid. He was tall and lanky, with a chaotic mop of curly brown hair on his head. He wore glasses, which was weird because most people opted for contacts. His face was all planes and angles, sharp, high cheekbones, thin lips, and a pointy nose which seemed way too big for his face. He introduced himself, paused to move some stray hair away from his eyes, then started in on his life story. His voice was thin, reedy, and anxious. Nettie squirmed in her seat. Holy fuck, she thought to Virginia. This is going to be insufferable. But then Lillian started talking about his family, specifically the long, slow death of his father, who was poisoned by environmental toxins in the area. The Southern music in his voice deepened, and his passion and determination to rehabilitate his home region through science and grit started to shine through. Nettie stopped scowling and scribbling and leaned in to listen. Jenny, she thought, I think this guy's the real deal. Virginia grabbed her partner's hand. That's high praise from a cynic like you. Lillian Ruby spoke for 50 minutes, and by the end, the room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. He nodded towards his audience, swept his hair away from his face, then ended his talk with a simple, "Thank you for listening," before exiting the stage. The hall erupted in applause. For a while, the stage was empty save for the podium. Eventually, Lillian Ruby returned, accompanied by the person who'd introduced him, and someone who looked like they might have been a bodyguard. He reluctantly took a bow, then tried to flee again, but his handlers made him stay put. Virginia could see he was clearly exhausted and uncomfortable with all the attention. He was, after all, just a kid. Nettie's VIP ticket included admission to the reception afterwards. Despite being billed as exclusive, the reception was crowded. Nettie was frustrated because there seemed to be no way to get Lillian Ruby alone for an interview. There was a receiving line, but it was long, and she'd be lucky if she could get a hello in edgewise. Still, Nettie and Virginia stood in line hoping for a miracle. They got something else. Nettie noticed it first. As they neared the young man of the hour, she squeezed Virginia's hand and thought to her very quietly, "Jenny, I think this guy's got the gift." Virginia squeezed back. "Are you sure? We're still several feet away. I don't feel anything." "Oh, I'm positive," thought Nettie. "He's cloaking really hard, but I definitely sense something. Tell you what, I'll attempt a quick stealth read when we shake hands to be sure. Are you sure you won't just piss him off? Don't be such a worrywart, Jenny. Watch me." Virginia shook her head. She wasn't a fan of that course of action, but there was no use telling Nettie no. Whenever Nettie sensed she might be onto something newsworthy, she got reckless. And it was precisely that recklessness that led to scoops. It's why Nettie was so good at what she did. Finally, it was their turn. Though it was relatively early, Lillian Ruby looked drained and ready to call it a night. But he greeted Nettie and Virginia with the same gracious smile he gave everyone else. Nettie shook his hand first. "I thoroughly enjoyed your talk this evening, Dr. Ruby," she said. "Thank you," said Lillian shyly. "I wish you success in all your endeavors. You have a bright future ahead of you." Then Nettie suddenly winced and grabbed her temple. Lillian had sensed her intrusion and unceremoniously kicked her out. It took everything in Virginia not to say "I told you so." "Are you okay, miss?" Lillian asked Nettie. His tone was only superficially friendly. Nettie took a beat to collect herself, then crisply replied, "I'm fine." Virginia shook Lillian's hand next. "I'm sorry my wife is such a nosy asshole," she thought to him. He registered Virginia's apology with a sly smile. "Thank you for coming tonight," he said. "My pleasure," said Virginia. After Lillian zapped her, Nettie made a beeline to the bar. She ordered a scotch on the rocks and downed it in a few gulps. "That little fucker," she snapped. "He kicked me out." Virginia tried not to laugh. "Well, you can't say I didn't warn you." "Do you realize how strong he must be?" Nettie thought to her. "I mean, he was cloaking, carrying on a simple conversation, and kicking me out at the same time. Dude didn't break a sweat." "Nettie, my love," teased Virginia, "I do believe you've met your match. But he's half my age. He's probably not finished with second puberty." Nettie ordered another scotch on the rocks and fumed. Then she got that strange look on her face she got when she was about to do something stupid. No, Virginia thought to her, definitely not. You shouldn't out him. The guy's already freaky smart. Folks would eat him alive if they knew he had the sight. And that's only if they believed he actually had it. You could just wind up making him a laughingstock. "I wasn't thinking of outing him," Nettie thought back. "It's obvious we have something in common, so maybe I can wrangle an exclusive before he leaves town." "You really think he'll talk to you after what you did?" asked Virginia. "Yes," Nettie replied, "because I did get a read on him before he booted me. The kid's lonely. He thinks there's nobody else like him in the world." After Nettie finished her second drink, she and Virginia left the bar and went out on the terrace overlooking the waterfront where it was less crowded. Though it was early October, the air was still weighty with summer, which was strange because snow was in the next week's forecast. The two women were staring at the water thinking about leaving when Lillian Ruby came up from behind, startling them both. He was taller than they thought. He must have been leaning on something when he was working the receiving line. "So," he said to Nettie, "are you usually in the habit of poking around in folks' heads without their permission?" Astoundingly, he didn't seem angry. In fact, he was faintly smiling. Nettie didn't even attempt to lie. "Yeah," she thought to him, "it's how I do what I do. You can find out a lot that way." Lillian asked, "So, what did you find out about me?" "I confirmed you had the gift. I could feel you cloaking when I was a few places back in line." "Is that all?" Lillian asked. "I know how strong you are, and—" Nettie hesitated before thinking the rest. "I know you're lonely, and I also know how hard this dog and pony show has been for you. You're not going to write about that, are you?" "No," Nettie replied aloud. "That would be cruel. I'm hard-nosed, but not cruel. Besides," she added, "I can't out you without outing myself. You two are the first people outside the Crescent I've met with the sight," he thought to both of them. "I'm sure there's more than us," Virginia said aloud. "Yes, but you two are strong." "So are you," thought Nettie. "I thought you were going to squash my head like an overripe tomato." "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to respond so harshly. You just scared me, that's all. There are not many outside my family who know about me." "Then why were you cloaking?" asked Virginia. "To make sure it stays that way," Lillian replied. "Being open about my gift hasn't worked out well for me in the past." Just then, Virginia had an idea. "Have you eaten? It's still early, and we were thinking about catching a bite." Lillian looked down at his feet. "I tried eating before my speech, but I was too nervous, so no." "Well then, why not have dinner with us?" Virginia offered. "There's a diner close. That is, if your people will let you out of their sight." He glanced at his wrist to check the time. "If we're quick about it," he replied. "I have an 11 p.m. curfew." Nettie laughed. "It was just 8 in the evening." "You really are just a kid." "Legally, I was until about 2 weeks ago. I just turned 18. "That must be weird for you," Nettie mused. To be so accomplished and still so young. Lillian nodded. It is. I've never felt like a child, and it's frustrating that the tour manager treats me like one. So, do you need to call your manager or anything before you leave the premises? Nettie asked. Because I'm ready to book this joint. I'm hungry. Yeah, Lillian replied. May I have your full names and some form of ID? It's for my manager. He'll want to know. Virginia gave him her driver's license and university ID. I'm Virginia Lassiter. Nettie handed him her passport and press credentials. Natisha Falcon. Thank you, kindly. I will return these. Just give me a minute. He wandered off for a bit, then returned and announced, Everything's good. I just have to be back here by 11. May I ask you a few questions on the record? Nettie asked as they left the reception. A few, but not too many, Lillian replied. I'm really tired. The diner was just a block away. When she was in town, Nettie ate there often, so when the trio arrived, the hostess immediately took them to Nettie's usual booth tucked away in a far corner near the rear of the restaurant. Lillian's eyes kept darting around like he was terrified of being recognized. But no one knew or cared who he was. This was Nettie's domain. When they were seated, Lillian perused the menu. Can I have breakfast? He asked eagerly. Have anything you want, Virginia said, smiling. Lillian ordered scrambled eggs with biscuits and gravy. Seems like someone's taste buds are a little homesick, teased Nettie. Lillian blushed. Yeah, he thought to them, they are. Plus, the tour manager thinks this stuff will kill me. Only if it's all you eat, Nettie said, laughing. True to her word, Nettie only asked him a couple questions on the record, mostly to clarify some of the details in his lecture. Then, she put the tablet away, and the three of them spent an enjoyable 2 hours talking about anything and everything. Lillian was overjoyed to not have to perform for once. It sure beat all those rigidly choreographed meetings with potential investors. Virginia and Nettie got Lillian back to his handlers with just 10 minutes to spare. They exchanged contact information and vowed to keep in touch. Whenever a lecture tour brought Lillian anywhere near, he made sure to schedule a visit with Nettie and Virginia. He was grateful to have some place on the road where he could relax and be himself. The women became surrogate moms to him, Nettie especially. She'd traveled to almost every continent, and she had plenty of dirt on everyone, and that she didn't have, she could dig up quickly. She possessed a clear-eyed, unsentimental view of the world, and she didn't flinch when crap got real. So, when H. Prentice Grove, the obscenely wealthy head of Grove Pharmaceuticals, offered to shower Lillian with a ton of seed capital, Lillian called on her for advice. Have you met him face to face? Nettie asked. She was a stickler for in-person meetings, especially when there might be a substantial amount of credits involved. Then you could do a stealth read and get the truth. Yes, he booked us a private booth at Lafayette, Lillian replied. I thought he was a little extra. I was uncomfortable. He kept trying to get me drunk the whole time. That was the whole idea. He understands you're brilliant, but he also knows you're incredibly young, a bit naive, and grew up poor. He was trying to dazzle and disorient you. Did you read him like I taught you? Yes. Ma'am, I did. Although he had been loath to learn, Nettie had insisted on teaching him how to do a stealth reading and not get caught. Though Lillian could clearly see the advantages of such a technique, he was still conflicted about using it. Ever since he had come into his power at the ripe old age of 4, it had been drilled into him never to read someone without their consent. And what did you feel? Nettie asked. that the man's as slippery as a hog in warm jello. She laughed. That's a fair assessment. So, what can you tell me about him, Miss Nettie? Well, she began, H. Prentice is a piece of work. He's cunning, ruthless, and thinks he's God's gift to women, and spreads his seed accordingly. He's rumored to have at least 10 kids scattered throughout the shattered states. He fancies himself a modern warrior and owns an extensive collection of firearms. He spent his gap year as a sniper in the Lithium Wars, and since he was blessed to survive that little adventure, he now thinks war is the most fun you can have with your clothes on. Supposedly, he sponsors mercenary armies all over the planet, but I can't find enough evidence of this to make it stick. Lillian huffed impatiently. Sometimes when Nettie got going, she got a little high on her own supply and took forever to get to the point. So, he interjected, what you're telling me is that I shouldn't accept his offer. I said no such thing, but I don't like him. Nettie started laughing again. This time it hurt because Lillian knew she was laughing at him. Who gives a flying fuck whether you like him or not? The man's got what you need. You're poor, your university's poor, and even if the feds get their act together, the support they'll give will be piddling. You need the credits, and he's got oodles, so take them. Lillian tried to object. Listen, I know what you're thinking. How can I accept help from such an obvious slimeball? She wailed melodramatically. Then she made it worse by singing. How can I stay pure in a world so fucked and confusing? So what if that's what I was thinking? Lillian grumbled. What's so wrong with that? Listen to me. Never let the perfect be the enemy of the good. You're playing with the big boys now. Just hire yourself a decent lawyer, I can give you the names of a few, and keep your eye on the prize. Every time you think you feel yourself slipping, take a ride on the ferry, open yourself, use the sight you were given, and let the outside's suffering sink deep into your heart so you don't forget. Remember the anguish you felt as your father faded away. Remember your promise to him to make things better. Let his memory be a source of strength. I do not understand a third of what you do in that lab of yours, but I know that given the proper resources, you have the ability to alleviate some of the pain on this earth. H. Prentice has those resources, and if you keep your head on straight and never forget who and what you're fighting for, you can turn some of his darkness into light. Virginia, who'd picked up in the middle of their conversation, concurred. Baby, I know you want to do the right thing and keep your hands clean, but H. Prentice is one of the wealthiest people on this planet. If he invests in you, others will follow. Guard your heart and keep your head, but don't let this opportunity pass away. Lillian stumbled into the kitchen a bit past noon. Greetings, sleepyhead, Virginia said brightly. I left a plate for you in the fridge. Lillian opened the fridge to find a plate stacked high with pancakes with a side of eggs. Gracious Jenny, you went whole hog. Well, you need some meat on your bones. I've already told you, Lillian said, chuckling. I'm not starving. He popped the plate in the microwave and grabbed some maple syrup. He noticed the syrup was the real deal, not imitation. Jenny, this stuff costs a fortune. Virginia shrugged. You talking about the syrup? Well, life is too short for nasty food. Besides, why do you care what it costs? Jenny, I grew up poor. I'll always care about what things cost. So, has your tour manager given you an update? The official total is 73.5 inches and the shuttle port's on ground stop. He says at least 3 days now, Lillian replied. What about you? When do you have to go back to work? Tomorrow. Really? Lillian asked. I didn't think it would be so soon. Listen, if we totally shut down for days on end every time we had a storm, we'd never get through a semester, Virginia said. They start monitoring the tunnels and making preparations as soon as a storm is predicted. We rarely lose more than a day. So not many snow days? Lillian asked. Only one or two if we can help it, Virginia replied. It's not like the Crescent. No, it isn't, Lillian said as he sat down to eat, because we tend to get ice storms with cold weather, and that's a whole nother beast. Since you're stranded for a few days now, asked Virginia, how long will you be staying with me? Lillian knew what his answer should be. As long as I can, Jenny. I know you like having someone in the house with you. She blushed. It was embarrassing to be so transparent and so needy. Thank you. She politely excused herself, then went to her office to check her email, leaving him to finish breakfast. The first email Virginia opened was the official announcement she'd been dreading. The main campus would close permanently at the end of the current academic year, and next year, the university would be scattered across the continent. The philosophy department, along with classics and English literature, would relocate to facilities in Liberty City Dome. After nearly 5 centuries, it had all come down to this. Nothing lasted forever. Of course, Virginia had known about the planned move for a while, but this was the first official word the students, their parents, and university support staff would receive. Now it was no longer a rumor. And even though she was assured a soft landing at the end of the transition, the original campus closing still felt like losing a close friend. Just so much loss. First, her beloved Nettie, and now this. Tears welled up in her eyes. She'd been weeping at her desk for several minutes when Lillian wandered in and asked, Jenny, what's wrong? He'd probably sensed her sadness all the way from the kitchen. She was too distraught to send him a thought, much less speak, so she just pointed to the screen. Oh dear, he whispered. I know you've known for a while this was coming, but it still hurts. But now my students know for sure, Virginia thought to him. I'm not sure how they'll take it. Lillian pulled up a chair. You never know. They might be okay. The older ones will probably think it's a pain, and the younger ones might think it's a grand adventure. Virginia smiled weakly. That's very optimistic of you. I know you're just saying that to make me feel better. How many classes do you have tomorrow? He asked. 1, Virginia wearily replied. It's my big intro lecture at 3. She wiped her eyes, then asked, still sniffling, Why don't you come to class with me? Lillian looked down at his hands. He wasn't sure what he should say. I know how much you hate the circuit, but this would be different. It'll be kids, not a bunch of stuffy people with too much money. I have nothing prepared, he said stiffly. Just be yourself. But I was thinking of asking even before this email dropped. Lillian fidgeted and ran his fingers through his hair. I don't understand. What do you want me to do? Talk about the campus closing? Maybe the kids will want to talk about that, but I think they'll want to talk more about you. They'll have questions, and I'm sure they won't be the same tired questions you get from investors or corporate drones. You just answer them. It could actually be fun. Well, I don't know, Lillian mumbled. Will they know I'm coming? Nope, Virginia replied. It will be a total surprise, and anyone who skips class will regret it for the rest of their born days. Well, he was still wary. So, Virginia pulled her trump card. Nettie even did it once. I don't believe it, Lillian said flatly. I can't imagine Nettie in a classroom, regaling drunks in a bar maybe, but not a classroom. It was after that big storm 5 years ago, Virginia explained. She was set to shuttle off to investigate the natural gas explosion in the Mississippi Valley, but the weather had other plans. Nettie was grounded for a week, while I was barely out of work a day. By day 3, she was climbing the walls and driving me nuts. You know Nettie never could stay in one place for long, so I suggested she come to my intro class. When we walked in together, Virginia continued, the kids immediately started whispering amongst themselves, probably because they couldn't believe their boring, dowdy philosophy professor would know anyone that cool. They didn't know you two were married? Asked Lillian. Nope, we kept our private lives private. Virginia went on to tell him that all this happened around the time Nettie had become infamous for posting raw footage from her days as a correspondent covering the lithium wars. Her goal was to shock the militia posers out of agitating for civil war by force, feeding them war's grim reality. Each video began with several seconds of high-resolution body horror, over which Nettie's husky voice would taunt. So it's war you want? Well, this is what war is. Then she would painstakingly describe every disgusting detail about the scene she'd filmed, and you know how much Nettie loved a good gross-out story. The videos sparked a huge debate and nearly got her blacklisted. Folks couldn't decide whether she was cluttering the internet with more disaster porn or performing a much-needed public service. I remember, Lillian said. Anyway, after the students got over being starstruck, Virginia said, someone asked Nettie what drove her to post such graphic videos. Did she think she had prevented violence? Or had she unintentionally glorified it? That led to one of the best class discussions I've witnessed in all my years of teaching. Nettie even enjoyed herself. Lillian chuckled. She always loved a good argument. So who knows, maybe you'll enjoy yourself too. He wasn't so sure. There was no guarantee lightning would strike in the same place twice, but perhaps he should grant his friend this one favor. Her mood had brightened considerably merely thinking about the possibility he might assent to her request. I'll consider it, he finally said. Virginia sprung from her chair and threw her arms around him. Let me know tomorrow morning. I might not say yes, he warned her. She hugged him even tighter. Don't worry, you will. The following afternoon, he found himself walking into a lecture hall filled with nearly 150 first and second year students. They all looked annoyed they had to gear up and trudge through the dank, freezing tunnels when they would rather be in bed. Per Virginia's instructions, he kept his headgear on and his visor morphed to opaque to heighten the mystery. Lillian thought that was needlessly corny, as well as a bit creepy, but he reluctantly played along, while Virginia spent a few seconds pretending to fiddle with things on her desk. Lillian used his last precious moments of anonymity to match faces to the names on the seating chart she had texted him that morning. Here, she had said, use that freakishly good memory of yours and learn these kids' names. Finally, she gave him the signal and it was showtime. Class, she announced. I know the last thing you felt like doing today was gearing up to trudge through those freezing tunnels, so I decided to make it worth your while. I'd like to introduce my good friend, Dr. Lillian Ruby, the... Don't say it, Lillian thought to her. Hush, she thought back. Founder of Ruby Biotech. Sorry, Jenny. I thought you were going to call me the boy wonder of the bayou. Virginia struggled to suppress a giggle. He demorphed his visor and removed his headgear. The class seemed to suck in their breath in unison. After the big exhale, the young woman seated in the middle section, third row, gasped, "Oh my God!" Lillian recalled from the seating chart that her name was Joanna Schmidt, and she was an aspiring pre-med major on a full scholarship who hailed all the way from Northwest Woods. He blushed before he could stop himself. "Thank you for the warm welcome," he said shyly. "I've never been greeted like a rock star before." There was some scattered laughter, and Joanna sank into her seat. Lillian immediately felt awful. He hadn't meant to embarrass her. This surprise appearance thing was a horrendous idea. "I'm terribly sorry, Miss Schmidt. I didn't mean to make you feel uncomfortable." "How do you know my name?" she asked. "Jenny texted me the seating chart and I memorized it." "Whoa," exclaimed Joanna, mind blown. "So, what's the deal, Dr. Lassiter?" asked the young man seated second row center. He sported several buttons, promoting various political causes. Lillian recalled his name was Charles Pettigold, and that he was a second-year student who hadn't yet declared a major. "Can we ask Dr. Ruby anything?" "Yes," Virginia and Lillian replied in unison. Then Lillian asked, "Would you like to start?" Charles hesitated. He hadn't expected to go first. You're sure I can ask you anything? Because I want to ask something pretty controversial. If I can answer, I'll tell you." Charles cleared his throat a few times to warm up. "Dr. Ruby," he began, "H. Prentice Grove, the second richest man in the world, has been a major investor in Ruby Biotech almost since its founding. Mr. Grove has a reputation for engaging in less than ethical business practices and is also rumored to support one of the most ruthless armies in the lithium wars, so he can maintain a stranglehold on the rare earth minerals he needs for his empire. You claim you founded your company to do good, to heal some of the damage our species has inflicted on the earth. So, what I want to know is, how can you accept the backing of an unrepentant polluter and murderer?" For the second time that afternoon, everyone stopped breathing. "Lillian," Virginia thought to him, "you don't have to answer that." He quickly rebuffed her. "Don't worry about me, Virginia, I'm fine," and fixed his gaze firmly on his interlocutor. "Well, Mr. Pettigold," he quipped, "you certainly like to jump right in the deep end." "Christ's pet," someone moaned a few rows back. "Do you have to ruin everything with your righteous bullshit? Dr. Ruby is cool." Charles Pettigold crossed his arms and looked quite pleased with himself, but he wasn't as slick as he thought. Lillian read him in a heartbeat and knew a trap when he felt it. "Tell you what," Lillian said, "I'll answer your question as soon as you stop recording me." The brief look of shock on the young man's face all but confirmed his guilt, but he tried to deny it anyway. "How do you know I'm recording?" Lillian shrugged. "I just know, so please stop." Virginia marched up to Charles with her outstretched hand. "Mr. Pettigold," she said sternly, "please surrender your phone. You know there is no unauthorized recording of guest lecturers in this class." Charles petulantly did as he was told. "Now," Lillian said with a sigh, "we can begin our discussion, but do you mind if I ask you a question first?" "Go ahead," Charles said. "How old are you?" 19. "Why? What does that have to do with anything?" "I was a year younger than you when H. Prentice first approached me." "Yeah, but," Charles argued, "you were a hell of a lot smarter than me." "Might you be referring to that boy wonder of the Bayou crap?" Lillian asked. There were scattered giggles. No one was surprised Lillian hated the moniker. "Surely you must know you're brilliant," Charles said. "Oh, I admit I knew plenty about my field," Lillian acknowledged. "But when I was 18, I'd barely been out of the Crescent, and when I did travel, I went to academic conferences where I spent time with others like me. I'd never met anyone remotely like H. Prentice. I knew nothing of his world. So, you claim ignorance then? Asked Charles. Sorry, but Ruby Biotech is going on 10 years old now. Surely you've had enough time to learn what Mr. Grove is about. Believe me, I sensed what he was about as soon as I met him. He reserved a private booth at Lafette and tried his damnedest to get me drunk. He figured if he disoriented the country bumpkin, he'd have me eating out of the palm of his hand. I don't understand, Charles said. If you didn't like his vibe from the beginning, why did you associate with him? Because I needed the money, Lillian stated simply. Charles's eyes widened. I can't believe you'd just come right out and admit it. I thought you bullshit me. Believe me, Mr. Pettigold, I struggled, and I still struggle, with the decision. Although I didn't have a firm handle on H. Prentice's reputation when I first met him, I knew I didn't appreciate the way he tried to take advantage of me during our meeting at Lafette. Yet, everyone around me kept telling me about how wonderful it was Mr. Grove had expressed an interest in me. They kept telling me it was my big chance. I did know I needed an infusion of credits and fast, Lillian continued. It would be nice if a restless brain bursting with ideas was enough to be effective in this world, but it's not. The Crescent Regional University offers an excellent education, but it, like most people in the region, is credit poor. I was poor, and the few federal grants available weren't going to be enough. If the oil-eating microbe I synthesized was going to help my home region, I needed more funds. Else, it just wasn't going to happen. Why didn't you go to the Crescent Board? Charles asked. There's plenty of barons there. I did. They were all non-committal, which frankly didn't surprise me. The deep outside wouldn't be half as toxic as it is if they gave two shits about it. There was a sudden flurry of whispers. The boy wonder wasn't known for cursing. H. Prentice was the first person to actually put something on the table, Lillian explained. I didn't like him, but I had to take his offer seriously. How did you make peace with it? Asked Charles. Lillian noticed the young man's tone had softened considerably. He wasn't playing gotcha anymore. I called on a friend for advice. I asked her if she knew anything about H. Prentice Grove, and she quickly rattled off a litany of his improprieties. So you're saying I should turn him down? I asked. Definitely not, she said. She told me to get off my high horse, advised me to get a good lawyer, and accept the credits he had to offer. If H. Prentice invested in me, she said, then others would follow. But she also told me something else. To never forget why I founded Ruby Biotech, and to remember what I was fighting for if I ever found myself slipping and tempted to become like H. Prentice. She told me to hop a ride on the ferry to the deep outside and let the suffering I witnessed sink deep in my bones to bring me back to center. Lillian stole a glance at Virginia, who'd found an empty seat in the second row. Jenny's advice was valuable too. She warned me to guard my heart and keep my head. Why are you still involved with H. Prentice after all this time? Charles asked. Contractual obligations, Lillian replied. Once again, Charles was taken aback by his candor. You really don't believe in bullshitting, do you? Bullshitting would insult your intelligence, Mr. Pettigold. You demanded the truth. I gave it to you. Silence. Do you have any more questions for me, Mr. Pettigold? No, sir, Charles replied, almost too quietly to hear. Thank you. Lillian leaned against the desk. Anyone else? Several hands shot up. The class was scheduled for 75 minutes, but Lillian fielded questions for over 2 hours. Virginia finally put a stop to it when her stomach started grumbling. Luckily, no one else needed the room. The questions ranged from the confrontational to the silly, and Lillian graciously answered everyone. Virginia could tell he was enjoying himself because his native drawl deepened as the afternoon went on and he actually cracked a few jokes. In fact, she'd never seen him look so relaxed in public. When the class finally broke up, Charles Pettigoat lagged behind. At first, Virginia suspected he only wanted his phone back, but he also stopped to apologize to Lillian. "I'm sorry I tried to record you without your permission," he said, "but I was expecting you to be someone else." "Who were you expecting me to be?" Lillian asked. Charles shrugged. "I guess I was expecting you to be like every other Baron I've met. Not that I've met many, but you're not full of yourself." "I'll take that as a compliment." "That's what it is," Charles said. Then he retrieved his phone from Virginia and walked away. "I think it went well," Virginia mused at dinner. To bleed off some of the nervous energy left over from the class, Lillian had cooked them a veritable feast. "I just hope Joanna forgives me," Lillian fretted. "I didn't mean to embarrass her." Virginia just laughed. "I can't believe you're still obsessing about that. She got over it. And by the way, you handled Charles like a pro. He's always trying to start something. Do you know he's the first person to call me a baron to my face?" Virginia laughed again. "Well, newsflash. You are a baron now. You can't deny you've done quite well for yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think you're anything like H. Prentice, though, if that's what you're worried about." "No, but Charles immediately got an attitude about me," Lillian said. "He wrote an entire biography in his head based on that one word. I sensed his hatred as soon as you introduced me." Virginia thought to him, "And somehow you think his reactionary hatred is a sign of you losing your way?" Lillian nodded. "I know that sounds ridiculous, but yes. Listen, you've changed a lot in 10 years. You're no longer that naive and anxious kid with a mind too big for his body. And sure, you're a little tougher around the edges. But I don't see you ever becoming like H. Prentice. You just don't have it in you, if you say so." Silence. Then Virginia gingerly sent a thought. "I suspect I know where some of this is coming from. I know you've just been offered a seat on the Crescent board." Lillian was flabbergasted. So far, he hadn't told a soul about the invitation. "How do you know about that?" Virginia replied without shame. "Yesterday morning I read you while you were asleep because I sensed there was something more on your mind besides quitting the circuit and buying out H. Prentice." Lillian was tempted to protest, but quickly decided against it. It was useless to be angry with her. She'd only meant the best. "Okay, Jenny," he sighed. "You got me. I get your concern. I know the Crescent board, like most boards, is corrupt," Virginia began, "and that it positively reeks of old money. But that's where the power is. If you truly want to improve things for your region, that's precisely where you need to be. Do you have any idea how badly the board screwed my family when they first arrived in the Crescent?" Virginia shook her head. "That's one folksy story I've never shared about my childhood. You see, my father had actually won a place in the Dome lottery, but by the time we got to the border, the Crescent board had declared that lottery null and void. My father had blown the family's meager savings to move us to the Crescent, and he did it primarily for me." "I'm so sorry," thought Virginia. "I didn't know." "You were never supposed to know. That was a tale my handlers never approved. It showed the wrong people in the wrong light and made the Crescent, and by extension Ruby Biotech, look like a bad investment. but my family came very close to being booted from region and having nowhere else to go. We were saved by the kindness of strangers from the deep outside. The board didn't care if we lived or died. Then it sounds like sitting on the board would be the perfect revenge, Virginia argued. I'm not interested in vengeance, Lillian said tersely. Then do it for the outside, Virginia snapped. Fuck Lillian, this isn't just about you. Do it for the next wonderkin who comes along and needs capital for the next great innovation. You've got something the other board members don't, street cred. I'm certain most of them haven't ventured outside that dome in years. Outsiders need a voice, and that could be you. Lillian squirmed in his seat. What the hell are you so afraid of? That merely sitting on the board will corrupt you? The experience will definitely change you, but I doubt it will make you forget your mission. You are so much stronger than you think. For almost 10 years, H. Prentice has tried his damnedest to remake you in his image, and you've stubbornly remained your own man. And that man is good, patient, funny, and smart. I saw him in class today. Give yourself some credit. Jenny, Lillian confessed, I'm scared. Virginia squeezed his hand. I understand. You've come so far so quickly. I'm proud of you, Lillian. Nettie was too, and that's telling you something, because she could be stingy with praise. She thought you were the real deal from the beginning. She did she? Is that why she tried to read me that night? Probably, Virginia replied, laughing. Also, because she was nosy as hell. Lillian, you got this. Thank you, he thought back. Then he stood and started to clear the dishes from the table. Don't worry about the kitchen, Virginia told him. I'll get it. After all, you cooked. She patted her stomach. A lot. Thanks, said Lillian, yawning. I think I'm going to hit the bed. Virginia didn't see Lillian again until the following afternoon when she was grading papers in the living room. As soon as she saw him, she sensed something different. All the knots inside him were gone. He radiated sunshine and peace. Greetings, sleepyhead, she said. I wasn't asleep the whole time, said Lillian. Oh, and what were you doing? Fighting with the tour manager mostly, he replied wearily. The weather trends for the rest of the tour are frightening, and after some wrangling, we've decided to cancel all future dates. Virginia put down her tablet. Really? And your people were okay with that? Lillian went to the kitchen to fill the teapot. They are now, especially once I proved the potential delays would cost more credits than it was worth. Also, I'm tired, Jenny. It's time to quit. So, in a way, my class was your last public performance, said Virginia. I guess it was, Lillian said. Maybe I went out on a high note. Well, I'd say you did. So, when you leave here, are you going straight home? No, replied Lillian. I'm headed to Upper Midwest to meet with H. Prentice. He actually invited me to his primary residence. It's the first time he's ever done that. Most likely, he'll try to convince me to rethink the buyout, but my mind's made up. Did you think any more about the Crescent board? Asked Virginia. Lillian took a dramatic bow. You'll be happy to know I graciously accepted their invitation to join. By now, Virginia had left her tablet and her student papers behind and was sitting at the kitchen table watching Lillian cook himself a late breakfast. How do you feel now that you've decided? She thought to him. Lillian replied aloud, Believe it or not, I feel fine. I think the weight of having made a momentous decision is easier to bear than the weight of not deciding. He thought to her, I'm still scared, though. I've always known I was different, but I never expected to be a baron. Virginia smiled. Don't worry, honey. You'll do fine. Lillian stayed on for 2 more days. When he left, Virginia was sad to see him gear up and go. "You gonna be okay alone?" he asked her just before leaving. "If you ever get unbearably lonely, I can shuttle you down to the Crescent for a visit. The good thing about being a baron is that you can do stuff for your friends." "Please don't. I'll be fine," Virginia assured him. "How about you?" "I think I'll be okay too." They shared one final hug. Even when he was in full gear, Virginia could still feel his ribs. "Kick H. Prentice's ass for me," she whispered. Lillian laughed. "I wish I could." "Guard your heart and keep your head," Virginia thought to him. "And always remember, like Nettie said." "I will," Lillian promised. "Thanks for listening to me whine." Then he slung his backpack over his shoulder, and Virginia watched him disappear into the tunnel's darkness.
Professional audiobooks in a click. Spoken.